Yeah, so let's do this. Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird and Strike the Sun MD, a series of booktube channels where we talk about books and apparently movies and video games, as Lucas has been doing as of late. But when we combine, we talk about movies that we've maybe never seen before or that we're excited about. And today we come to you with a pretty exciting, interesting, a bit of a strange movie, at least seeing where movies like it have come since then. And that movie is all about a murder and the police officers who solved that murder. We are referring to The Naked City, which was made in 1948, directed by Jules Dassin, written by Malvin Wald, starring Barry Fitzgerald and Dorothy Hart, among many other people. And it is a bit of a doozy. I am joined today by Lucas from Strike the Sun, as I mentioned before. How are you doing, Lucas?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I watched the movie a couple hours ago. It was a good time.
Yes, I watched the movie yesterday, probably like 12 hours ago. My experience with this movie came from first playing LA Noir's The Naked City DLC. Which it's a fun game. It has its flaws, but I was expecting something sort of hard boiled, and this was not that.
No.
Like I came in with weird expectations, and not to say that this is bad. It's just if you go in with that kind of expectation, it's not going to deliver, because that is not what this movie is.
Yeah, not at all. It's such a strange movie because it's like a kind of a bad whodunit. But a great movie.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie set in a fantasy world where the police actually solve crimes.
Yeah. That was, I think, the craziest thing. The police like solved crimes and cared and were like respectful of civilians. Don't shoot unless you have to.
It's that mid 1900s sort of kind of nice cop kind of fantasy.
Yeah.
So it like the police may have very well tried their job, tried to do their job back then, but as we know, like police brutality and racism and whatnot has sort of always existed. So it just it's a kind of a that, I mean, that's where we're starting, but like we can't apply that to the movie because it feels a bit unfair given how sincere it's trying to be.
Yeah, that's an unfair kind. I mean, I guess it's a fair criticism, but you just kind of have to accept it. Like, yeah, police are not like that at all. Okay, great observation. You've kind of said nothing besides being contrarian in a way.
Yeah, basically anything that we say here is kind of layered or kind of like set against the backdrop of ACAB. All cops are bastards. So
my favorite song.
What?
My favorite melody. ACAB.
Yeah. So like I feel like that's where we're starting at, especially given that this is a police story, and we come into this knowing knowing about systemic police violence, and so that's now that we have that out of the way, we can finally talk about the movie at hand.
Brain off, ready to talk.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, so getting straight into the movie, it starts with the narrator's introduction. The narrator is a separate character, not really a person in the movie, But like they're talking about what's going on, starting out by saying this isn't a normal movie, which is a bit pretentious. It's like this is set in New York City using the apartments and the rooms and the streets of New York City. It's not in some Hollywood backdrop, and
not on a sound studio.
Yeah, which I don't know how true that is exactly, but like so it's turning
true.
New York into like another character in the movie, which sounds like a cliche, as so many movies have or and so many directors have said that. But the narrator is following the movie, or is in the movie throughout it. Again, sounding a little bit pretentious. I don't know if you caught that, but he's and also kind of acting a little bit goofy, which is one of the issues that I have with this movie, is that it's bizarre tone changes where it's trying to be super serious, and then the narrator is just kicking back and making jokes.
Yeah, that was something on my iPad. Most of my things that I wrote in my iPad were like, LOL, the narrator just ruined the moment. There's a point where like, what does he say? He says like, I can't remember what happened, but there was a confession to the crime in the middle of the movie. And then and then the narrator was like, would you be interested to learn that there was a confession would you be interested to learn that there was a confession only 10 minutes ago?
Yeah. It's
Lieutenant Muldoon, what's your hurry?
Yeah, it's like he doesn't really take any of this seriously, and so why should we? Which is not what you're going for with this kind of story that you're telling.
Yeah, it was so weird because they were very serious, very sincere, pretty well acted, I would say. I thought they were great, all the actors. Some of the dialogue was kind of like campy, like 1940s going into the 1950s kind of dialogue, but that was fine. I wouldn't complain too much about that. It felt fairly natural for today. It was just kind of weird to hear like swell anytime something good happened.
Yeah,
but okay, it's a different time, so I can accept that. But yeah, I think I came around to the narrator by the end. I think the last narration was fantastic, but the rest of it, he was just like a goofball.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect description there. The narrator just goes into talking about the city and what's going on. He highlights a radio DJ who says it's music playing song after song and after song, and the radio DJ says, does anyone but my wife even listen to this? And I felt so seen there, because I've also been on the radio and asking who is listening to my show at 9:00 at night, and the answer is somebody. There's a lot of people out there, like not just my friends who I've told to tune into the show, but just random listeners who will text in, or like who will just be like, oh, I listened to your show the other day. So, but like that complaint where you're just like wondering, what am I doing here? I felt very seen.
Yeah, that was a funny joke. That was a well-placed joke. But then the horror begins, because we see that Jean Dexter is being assaulted, has chloroform over her mouth so she won't scream, and then she's killed. And thus begins the story.
And not too long after that, one of the other killers is murdered as well, by the unseen second party who helped him, because he was drunk, and it seemed like he was probably going to confess at some point.
I thought one of the killers killed the other killer.
That's what I just said.
Oh, the way you said it sounded like an unseen second party.
Yeah, because we don't see that killer.
Yeah, but I thought you meant like they were because we'll get to that, but they were working with others, and I was like, I don't remember there being 3 parties. Where is the second party coming from? Okay. Yeah, oh yeah.
So Gene is killed, and already you have your story at hand, and then we're introduced to the detectives who are going to solve the case. Lieutenant Muldoon, Irish McIrish face. He's very much an Irish man.
Mr. Ireland himself.
Yeah, he's quaint like that. And then there's another detective who I never really got his name, but he seems like a more of a rookie.
The young man. Yeah. What? The young man. I don't know what his name was. I forgot.
Yeah, so they're investigating the case.
Oh no, Howard. Howard is his name because he goes home at one point and has probably the funniest scene in the whole movie.
Oh yes, I can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, so we're introduced to these detectives. This seems like another case to them, but they are remarking that it is pretty heavy. There's not a lot of leads for them to follow, and it's a bit of a doozy. And one of the first things they do is they go off and start investigating people who are close to Gene Dexter, including Dr. Stoneman, who right off the bat, I'm like, this dude is very strange. Like he says a few things. I didn't write down what exactly he said, but he just says a few things that are kind of off to me. His eyes are a bit shifty, and I'm like, this dude had something to do with it. And I was, right at the end of the movie. Like I was like, oh yeah, he did come back into play there.
Yeah. He's quite an interesting character. I mean, definitely right away you get the feeling that there's something about him. Maybe he's involved with the murder or just shady in general and connected with Gene in some way. It's not really clear at that point, but there's a lot of like quirks about all these characters. Dr. Stoneman, of course, comes off very shady. Muldoon is Ireland embodied, but also like whenever he notices something like that could help with the case, he always says it as a short phrase, like or he'll just be like observing. He's a very observant character. And there was one time I forgot what he was looking at the kids playing on the street, and I don't remember what he saw, but this is when I noticed that like, oh, every time he thinks about something or has an idea, he just says it out loud. And it was like, I don't remember what the actual thing they said that Muldoon said, but he was just looking down. The kids are playing. You can kind of hear them. And he goes, "A gray cat." And then turns around. Or it wasn't a gray cat, but it was something else. And I was like, and then I realized he's been doing that the whole movie. And he keeps doing it throughout the rest of the movie. Why does he just say what he's thinking like that?
Yeah. It's definitely a bit of strange writing, but you see that throughout the movie, like stuff that like normally like you wouldn't pause if it was just one time in a movie, but it's happening throughout the entire thing.
That's what makes him so charming, though. It's like he's so quirky in like in a pretty. It makes sense for him to do that, I guess, as a detective, as a pretty wise detective too. But it's just like, what?
And then they begin investigating more. Of course, Dr. Stoneman is weird. They go to Jean's modeling job. They find out that she was fired because the men took a particular interest in them, and Jean, and her boss didn't like that. Because the other women who come in might have been a little bit jealous. And then we're introduced to possibly one of my favorite character in the movie, Frank Niles, who in a really good scene, like we're introduced to him. He explains who he is, how he knew Gene Dexter, and then as it goes along, we find out that everything Frank is saying is a lie. He says he served in World War II. He actually didn't serve at all. He says he like had this successful business in where he sold like jewelry.
Yeah.
in Chicago, and it turns out no, his business doesn't even exist, or like it's not even that successful, and that like Jean helps him, but it's a bit unclear what her exact role in all of this is. And then also he has a fiance that he just didn't care to talk about. So as you go on, you're starting to suspect that Frank is one, a habitual liar, a bit of a con man, and like he's not telling the entire story. And Lieutenant Muldoon is right to say, follow him, see where he goes.
Yeah, at that point, like when he gets busted by Muldoon and he has to like cop up to it again and again. Even the things that he answers with at that point are also lies. Like he wants to get a job in industry. He's looking forward to that. No, he's not. And but at that point, at least in the movie, my note for Frank Niles was like the ultimate fail son, because you like came from a wealthy family or whatever, at least from what he said. Like he came from a wealthy family and then he wasn't doing so well. And like he wasn't good enough. He was a heel, so he wasn't good enough to even get into the military. But then we find out later, of course, there are some other mysteries to this man.
Yeah. He and I don't even have any reason to believe his past that he's talking about. Like he says he was a heel and like he couldn't get into the military, but do we even know if he actually like signed up or like was drafted or what even, like was he a draft dodger or something like that?
Right.
Or like he comes from like a very wealthy background. Again, that could be an entire lie that he tells to drum up sympathy for him, because that's all he knows how to do. They continue to investigate. A delusional old lady shows up who says that she knows how to solve the case, but it's clear that her mind isn't all there. It's played off like a joke, in that you see this in so many different cases of people who say they can help. And then there's a delusional grocery boy later in the movie. Yeah. Who confesses to the crime and stabbing Jean, even though she was not stabbed. But again, you see like the New Yorkers, the delusional New Yorkers, come out of the woodwork in order to help or like confess or just get their 15.
Yeah. What did you make of that? I wasn't really sure what to make of like having a couple character. Like if it was just one, maybe I wouldn't have thought too much of it. But I wasn't quite sure like. I forgot the director's name, but what is the director trying to say here by showing two of these delusional people?
Yeah, I think it's unnecessary because again, it messes with the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
But from another perspective, if you view this as sort of a sociological study of crime in New York or an anthropological study, it fits. Like this is what you would see as a police officer in New York, as a detective. So like if you view it that way, it's useful. But if you view it like as a hard-boiled kind of noir detective story, it is absolutely undermining to that tone and message that Dassin is going for.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was just like, well, I'll get to sort of that point. We'll get to it at the end, but just kind of like, these are the kinds of bumps that detectives will have to hurdle over, because New York is a large place full of suffering people, basically.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, Jimmy goes home for a short period of time because these men have to solve this case. But while he's there, his son apparently tried to walk over a boulevard someplace in New York City.
To go to a park.
And his mom, like Jimmy's wife, the second detective in the story, is is furious and says that he could have gotten hit by a car and that he needs to be punished. And this entire scene is devoted to her asking him to whip the son. Like it's
Yeah.
played off like a joke, like ha ha, like child abuse.
Yeah. This was such a weird scene because he comes into his like gorgeous wife who's just cooked dinner for him, and is like, everything seems so perfect and dandy and loving, and she's like, can you beat our child? You're the man in the house, you need to beat him. He didn't listen to me.
Yeah. And Jimmy's uncomfortable by it, and they're like, oh, I know we agreed not to hit our children, but I'm asking you to hit them this one time. Again, like maybe something that's funny in 1948, no longer funny.
I was laughing. I was laughing. I was laughing for different reasons than I was supposed to, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think the part that was the funniest for that was like, she this gorgeous woman who seems to be a loving wife and I guess loving mother is upset her child is not listening to her, doesn't want him to die, but wants her husband to beat him. And she's like, he says, why don't you do it if you want it to be done? And she's like, well, I'm the woman, you're the man, it's the man's responsibility. And he's like, says who? She doesn't have an answer for that.
Yeah, this movie has some time to, deliver some casual sexism in the course of its time. But yeah, then from there, Jean's parents show up to confirm that Jean is dead, noting that their last name does not match her last name. She changed it as she, got to New York. Her parents are very frustrated and sad, saying, oh, this foolish girl, but when they see her body, they change their mind. And as they're talking to the police officers, we get a very cool shot of them in the front with the Brooklyn Bridge and the city in the back.
Yeah, that was a great shot.
Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense that this takes place in New York City, given like they'd have to walk all the way across the city just to get to there. But
the rule of cool.
Yeah, it's a very cool shot, and we don't really learn too much about Jean here, but we do know that she's estranged from her parents. And again, like all of this is just not looking good for Frank, since he's like one of the closest people to Jean at this point.
Yeah, it's not looking good for him. He's definitely like the number one suspect, but he technically does have an alibi for the murder, but suspicions are mounting for other crimes of his.
Yep, and we see that after they meet with the delusional grocery boy, they managed to find a ring that I think Frank was trying to pawn off, or that had once belonged to Jean. This ring was actually Ruth's. Like Jean had and Frank had stolen the ring, and then Frank gave it to Ruth as like an engagement gift, she comes to learn quite a bit about Frank there, and she's like, please don't tell me that you got all this from Jean. Please tell me that you like stole it. That would be better than that. Like what was going on between you and Jean, and
it was Frank a present. It was a present.
Yeah, like Frank doesn't have an answer for this, and we come to learn that Frank and Jean have been kind of in cahoots, working together on this sort of thing. But what exactly is Jean's extent? We don't learn until much later in the movie. But again, this is more like suspicion on Frank, because he's been nothing but lying throughout the movie. And it's what's even worse is that once they figure this out, they go back to his place, like they hear like a scuffle going on. He's been chloroformed, which is
Yeah.
a fixture of this movie. And like the second person who killed Jean escapes out the window, and there's a cool balcony shootout that takes place before the second person manages to escape via the elevated train. And again, like they investigate Frank at this point, and they have questions like, what is your deal? Like, how are you? Why did this guy want to kill you as well? What's going on Frank? And
Yeah.
again, he continues to lie. That's the confrontation with Ruth there, where she comes to find out about Jean. And like Frank, I think Frank puts him on to some other people, but again, Frank is continuing to lie. There is the key point, and they're starting to run out of threads because of how obstructive Frank is being.
Yeah, that's right. But then I'm blanking right now. There's a point they bring somebody in. They're trying to get something out of him. But they bring somebody in from Boston, and as soon as he walks in, pops him in the mouth.
Yeah, like I think he stole something from him.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Oh no, he sold something to him that was stolen.
There we go. Yeah. It's so like
for $3,000 or something.
Yeah, it's like this is like Muldoon even like threatens him, like, if you don't tell me everything, I'm putting you away for 20 years, buddy. Like,
yeah.
I just need answers, and you are not providing us with anything. I think at that point,
this
Jimmy.
Sorry, you say what you want to say. I'll remember it.
No, I was saying at that point, Jimmy asked to go investigate the Bacalus connection. Peter Bacalus. Basically, that guy showed up and showed up at like a pier, like in the water. And we the audience know that this guy was murdered at the beginning of the movie because of his role with Jean's death. But the police don't know that. Jimmy just has a hunch that this might be related, and he's trying to figure out more about that. Muldoon is skeptical, but he's like, this is like your own thing right now. Like, I don't think it's related to the case.
Yeah, turns out he's wrong. But I think he also Howard or Jimmy or whatever recruits two other people to help him like canvas around. And eventually this whole thread of what he's doing leads to canvassing some part of New York to find a guy called Garza, I believe was his name.
Yeah. We actually don't find that out right away. But like I think Jimmy goes to like Garza's brother to ask where he is, and he's like, this dude tried to sell me something, and I'm pretty sure it was stolen. I don't ever talk to me about him again, or at least if you see him, put him away and throw away the key. We find out that Garza is actually a wrestler because they go to a wrestling gym.
Who plays the harmonica?
It's what?
Who plays the harmonica?
Right. Like, there's a circus guy who's like, oh yeah, they're or not a circus, but like a boxing gym guy who's like, if I saw anybody with a harmonica here, they would not be training in this gym, which I thought was a bit funny. But yeah, like we also see like old timey wrestling from like 1948, which is funny to me, someone who likes modern day wrestling.
Yeah.
But throughout this movie, they've been searching for someone named Henderson, and they believe that Frank knows who Henderson is, but he hasn't been willing to talk about that. But at the penultimate hour, Frank reveals that Henderson is Stoneman. That's right, the creepy guy from the beginning of the movie actually has a part to play. The cops set up a little bit of a sting where Stoneman enters the room and is like, "Oh, that's you, Frank. What are you doing here?" And it's revealed that Gene and Stoneman were pretty close, but Stoneman would regularly put on parties that Gene found out about. And what would happen is that anybody who showed up to the party, they would have their house broken into that very night. It took Stoneman a little bit of time to figure it out, but eventually he started to realize that Gene and Frank were in on this, and like he felt really guilty about it, and like he played some role in their death. And at that point he tries to jump out the window, which is highly dramatic, melodramatic. Luckily they're able to stop him, but he like feels an intense guilt, and he's just like, throw me in jail. I don't want to see the light of day anymore. I don't deserve it. But I think at that point we come to learn that Gene and Frank, they fucked around and found out, because they stole from the wrong people.
Yeah, that's right. And then I believe it's I think the next part is the young detective going around, and he's in like an ice cream shop or something run by an old lady, or a soda shop, because he gets a root beer. And like, oh, this part of the movie is just ridiculous, because it's when they're canvassing around and the narrator is like, excuse me, ma'am, have you seen somebody who looks like this? Excuse me, sir, have you seen somebody who looks like this? But with a transatlantic voice accent. Just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But then he finds someone who does recognize Garza from the photo. Takes her a little while, and then he immediately gives away that, like, you know, he's up to something, and he's pretty happy. Calls on the phone, and the old lady's like, you know, I don't want to cause him any trouble. You know, don't, please. Are you with the collection agency? You know, just, you know, he's such a sweet boy. His family's so nice, or whatever. And it's like, man. People talking to cops without lawyers or at all. What are you people doing? I mean, Garza needed to go to jail because he was a murderer, but like, come on.
Yeah, but it's funny because at that point, like, Stoneman or Frank, like, talks about Willie Garza being the person who did the murder, and we're like, Jimmy goes and confronts at the same time. He doesn't quite know that about the murder, but he does. I think he suspects, but he doesn't know fully how dangerous Garza is. So it's, you know, it's a very dramatic point where he tells Garza that his friend Bacalus, who's actually dead, is at the hospital, that he washed ashore, and that he asked Jimmy to come and deliver a message for him because he wants to see him. And Garza's like, oh, okay. He doesn't give away that this would possibly implicate him in anything. And then finally he just smacks Jimmy unconscious and is like, you know, you gave away too much, buddy. I know you're a cop because nobody knows where I live. Which is a very clever moment. I will note that Garza is incredibly sweaty.
Yeah, he was. What was happening? Was it summer at that time? But why was he so much more sweaty?
Well, yeah, it's summer at the time. I feel like that's like a big idea, a big thing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, no, they say it at the beginning. On a like at 1 a.m. on a hot summer night, Gene Dexter is killed, right? I forget the exact quote. So yeah, it was summer, but like, why was he so much sweatier?
Yeah, he was working out and whatnot, but maybe he doesn't do that very often. So yeah, like at that point, Garza knows the police are looking for him. He runs away, but the police have caught on, and so a chase scene ensues. Pretty good music, and there's a really good moment where you watch as Jimmy is running after Garza, and it's a really cool shot. I think there's a backdrop or something, because I was like, wow, how did they do that in 1948? And it's like there's probably a backdrop there, but
you're forgetting something even better before the chase scene really begins.
What's that?
When Garza climbs up the stairs and runs into the blind man, and the dog starts chewing on him, and the narrator's like, "Don't blow it, Garza. Don't lose your cool."
And he just pulls out his gun and shoots
And
the
shoots
dog.
Yeah.
That's so stupid.
That's so dumb. I love it. And then the police start know where he is because of the sound, and then they start chasing him. I thought an even cooler shot than that was like when he climbed up the bridge. Of course, Muldoon, being like a good Irishman cop, is like, "Now, Garza, if you give up now, everything will be okay. We won't shoot. I've told them to put their guns down."
And I actually believe Muldoon there. Like,
Yeah.
also he's like, we don't need any dead heroes. Don't go up there. Like, we have him trapped. There's nowhere he can go.
Yeah, that's right. But there's a really great shot, like I think he's already been shot in the hand or something. But Garza like looks down and he looks at like a tennis court or something, like a group of tennis courts, where adults and maybe kids are playing or something. You can't really tell because they're so small, but I just thought like, I don't know, I thought that was my favorite shot of the whole movie. Like it was such a cool like last last moment for him. It looked great on the screen. I don't know if it was really trying to say something. I guess it was just a like one last look at the city for him before he gets got. But
you do see the city behind him as he's climbing up the bridge. You could even say that this city looks a bit naked. The Naked City, that's the name of the movie. But yeah, he climbs up. I thought you said he was shot in the hand. I think he was, but I think that might have also just been the dog bite. He was getting.
Oh yeah, that's right. I thought I was like trying
the
to figure
origin
out
of it
why he was
is
bleeding.
weird.
It had to, yeah, you're right. It had to be the dog bite. I don't remember hearing another bullet, so yeah, maybe.
But yeah, he decides rather than turning himself in, like he just shoots at the police officers. They shoot back, and he falls off the bridge and dies. And the credits begin to roll from there. Oh, well, there's also the note that that like there'll be another case tomorrow and people's lives will go on, but Gene's death had a major impact for the people in this story. It doesn't
it had made
what?
Well, that's not how I understood the ending. I understood the ending to be like, yeah, there's going to be another case tomorrow. Gene won't be forgotten by some people. And then we see Frank Niles, who's in jail now. But then the final line is like absolutely amazing, where it's like there's 8 million stories in the Naked City. This has been one of them. As you see like a street cleaner sweeping up a newspaper on the street that is about Gene Dexter's murder case being solved. I just like when I saw that and heard that, I felt like, oh my God, that is the coldest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yep, she was a big deal for 6 days, I think it said, and then now she's not. I think that's like a very good way to highlight how complex and like how ever evolving New York City is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was just like there's so many moving pieces, and I guess there's like a main character, so to speak, of the city for short times, but they come and go, and life goes on, and life changes and evolves and adapts or whatever. And the city's full of hurting, suffering people, as we saw with the delusional people, or these people who've turned to crime. Yeah, I love the ending. I thought that was like really powerful and cold as hell.
Yeah, and it's like the exact tone that this movie kind of should have had the whole time. But what you
Yes.
would see in later stories of like noir and those detective stories of, a dame walked into my bar, or I had to solve this dame's murder, and then like you do, but then there's more down the road. It's a never-ending string of murders and robberies
Yeah.
and work to do there.
Yeah, that's right. Just a never-ending complex beast that can't be understood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really gets at the sociological kind of
Right.
the feel to the movie.
Yeah, like I said before, that was like the only time where the narrator had the like perfect cadence and like the right thing to say at the right time. Otherwise, he was just goofy as hell and was like weird comedy relief.
Speaking of another bit of funny moments in the movie, there's a moment where they're like, this case is going on forever and ever. And like 20 years from now, we'll still be working on it. And the other character says, that's great. I'll put my son on it.
Yeah.
And that was like a very good bit of humor there.
Yeah, that was a great joke. The movie did have some good like intentionally funny moments like that, and what was the other thing we were laughing at that was supposed to be funny?
The radio
Uh,
DJ.
yeah, that was really funny. Uh, but the like, please beat our child. That was also funny for the like not the way we were supposed to be laughing at it. I
Mm-hmm.
guess it was kind of like tongue in cheek kind of humor of like, or you gotta discipline your kids, isn't it? Kind of humorous that we always have the men do this because it's I don't know. I was writing like I wrote for that part like, is he challenging gender norms here in this movie about who should beat the child?
Yeah, it definitely felt like a very weird thing to add to the movie, that maybe they weren't considering the longevity and changing opinions, but I maybe that's not their intent here.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so the music and the shots were pretty good in this movie. Frank Niles is, as I mentioned before, is a really good character.
Yeah.
Especially at the end of the movie, I was wondering like what's going to be next for him. He'll probably end up in jail, but maybe he'll get out. And will this situation have changed him? I don't think so. The man is a habitual liar, a con man. Like this is going to be the thing that kills him. Like
Oh
his
yeah.
his life of lies is going to catch up with him in some way. He might get another woman killed down the road because he can't help himself. He's
Yeah.
that much of an asshole.
He's bad. It was like really fascinating to see such like a pretty frankly pretty evil character who's not like overtly like evil, but so self-absorbed or self-centered and like willing to throw under and anything under the bus and just do whatever he can to get one over on other people by manipulating them, lying to them, seeing what he can get away with. I mean, he's a real nasty piece of work, but he's not really played like that. Like he's played kind of charming or trying to keep his cool, but he loses his cool all the time. Or he makes other people lose their cool. Like the woman who just like slaps the crap out of him. Liar, 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 liar. Ah,
Yeah, Ruth is unhappy with him. And then again, this movie's also sociological. So
yeah, yeah,
um it's a very good like study of the police in New York, because it didn't try to go out of its way to be exaggerative. I don't think.
yeah,
Like it just told a detective story that had a little oomph, but not too much that it was just like, look at these detectives defying the laws of physics and whatnot.
yeah,
But there were some weird things about it. Of course, the narration was pretentious, the bizarre tone changes, and something that especially stood out to me is this movie was overwhelmingly white, which makes sense for the time period of Hollywood. But like the only one black character that I really saw and noticed was the black maid, like in a subservient.
Yeah.
And given this is after the Great Migration, where there were a ton of African Americans who moved from the South to the North, in New York, Detroit, Chicago, those types of areas.
Yeah.
So for this movie to focus entirely on white characters and have no people of color, I don't think that's really is an accurate portrayal of New York as it can be.
Yeah, not even like on the streets or in the gym or anywhere. Going up to an apartment complex just as a site, like I guess there was the maid, yeah, but like it was like such a white movie that it was kind of unbelievable. Like, is this the richest part of the neighborhood or what?
Of course there is the Bronx and Harlem, which does have higher percentages of people of color, but still, like this can't be an accurate portrayal of what it's like in New York City. Mostly because the police aren't beating down a bunch of people of color, but because you don't see those people of color. It's like, and I know this is what Hollywood was like at the time, but it still comes off very noticeable. And maybe like this story wouldn't be as memorable. Like it would be more memorable if there was a diverse cast of characters. But and I think that's one of the reasons this doesn't exactly hold up over time, because we know New York to be a very different place than this.
Yeah, it was definitely like a weird fantasy where the cops are nice guys, level-headed, not worried, not feeling like I'm in danger when they're not in danger, and it's all white.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, I thought,
those are the things I loved and didn't love so much about the movie. Is there anything else you want to add about this?
No, really. Usually I ask you which character you relate to the most, but to be honest, I don't relate to any of them. I just think I like Stoneman's reaction. That's what I relate to.
Yeah, I don't really relate to Frank, but I do very much like him as a character.
Yeah, he's the best character by far. But they're all well acted. Although I feel like they could have not made Muldoon walking talking Irish stereotype. I mean, that was ridiculous.
I wonder what Muldoon would have been like if had this story taken place in Los Angeles instead. Like what kind of stereotype would he be there?
I don't know. That would be an interesting question to think about. Anyway, I guess it's now time to find out what movie we will be watching next month.
Yes. So I chose The Naked City for this month. And although I didn't, I do have problems with it. I think I'm better off for having watched it.
I agree.
Especially seeing where stories have come from there. So I think this was ultimately, I'm glad it didn't suck, because then I would have felt really bad about choosing a random movie. But yeah, what do you have planned for September for me, Lucas?
Well, comrade, as I told you before, this is going to be a Soviet film, because we just watched an American film, so we need to get a little bit of that communism in there. I don't know how communist this movie is, but we are going to be watching Andrei Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev.
Oh, I have never heard of that. I think I've heard of the director. But again, I've never seen anything from him. So this will be interesting. I don't think I've ever watched a Russian film as well. So I'm in for a completely new experience.
Yeah, I need to let you know beforehand, if you've never seen any of Tarkovsky's films, absolutely stunning director, very meditative and slow paced. So if that's your interest, then you're in for a good time. And if it's not your interest, I bet you that you will understand, that you will see it like, oh, I see why people would like these slower pieces, because he's so good at what he does. So, Andrei Rublev.
Yeah, be on the lookout for that next month in early September. But yeah, other than that, if you have anything to say about this movie or our comment, or like you want to comment on our review, do so in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this movie or the major players within it. Also join the Discord. Lucas posts there from time to time, and we would love to hear whatever you have to say about whatever's going on in your life. And until then, we wish you the best of luck in your weird and New York City travels. Farewell.
Farewell.